In the city that doesn't sleep, some business owners are lying awake at night. John Scanlon runs a hardware store in the Bronx.
Are the laws and the taxation rates in New York taking the American dream away from people here?
Absolutely.
Businesses big and small are thinking twice about where they are conducting business. This week, a look at why so many are leaving New York.
We do about a third of our business that we do in this bar restaurant in about 16 days.
But of all the Sturgis rallies, there's never been one quite like last year's. 460,000 bikers descended upon the Black Hills of South Dakota at the height of the coronavirus pandemic.
Was there consideration given? Were people talking about should we try to cancel it?
This week, we're in Sturgis and find some surprising facts after dire predictions in the year of COVID.
Yeah, so we're entering into the secondary area here. We've got our canine, we've got our contraband enforcement team who specialize in detecting narcotics.
So what are the big changes that have happened here since coronavirus?
And we're on the Mexican border to find out how COVID impacted the flow of illegal drugs into this country.
Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. Around the country, Americans are fleeing big cities and their big city problems for lower crime, lower tax states where the living is easier. No place is getting harder hit than the Big Apple, population about 8.4 million and falling. Today, Lisa Fletcher investigates the mass exodus and what could be the impact on America's biggest and most famous city.
Bay Home Center since 1991, a fixture on Westchester Avenue in the Bronx. Each shower head, each oven, each copper pipe, a milestone to owner John Scanlon.
I have over $1 million in inventory in the store, right? It took me 30 years to buy. Plus, I know the neighborhood and the products better than any internet or box store could ever understand it.
About 99% of the businesses in all 5 boroughs are small businesses. They're owned by folks like you. Is this something you always wanted to do?
I worked for someone for a decade and said, hey, I could do this. I love being my own boss. No, it's sort of like my American dream.
Still, the upside has its downside.
It's very hard to try to keep the boat above water on a constant level.
Between taxes,
I own this building, right? The taxes are over $50,000 a year.
Regulations.
Beautiful woman walks in here, right? I said, can I help you? She goes, oh, I just wanted to make sure that everything had the price on it, right? I go, what do you mean? She goes, I work for the city. So I go, what happens if it didn't have the price? So you would have got a fine.
And ordinances that killed credits to landlords for fixing up their buildings.
All the landlords that were like a good half of my business, right, stopped. All they used to like put a new kitchen and a new bathroom, right, and fix the place up and keep the neighborhood, viable.
The cost of doing business in New York City doesn't always add up in the Bronx.
Are the laws and the taxation rates in New York taking the American dream away from people here?
Absolutely.
Stories like Scanlon's echo across the concrete canyons of this city, where businesses, big and small, are thinking twice about where they're conducting business. Nationally, the average business tax per employee is $6,500. In New York State, it's nearly 63% more, at $10,400. Virginia, Florida, and North Carolina, by comparison, all below the national average. The state has an onerous array of income tax brackets. Soon, New York's top earners could pay out as much as 15%, making New York the highest in the nation. And while higher taxes on higher earners may sound like a good revenue-generating option for the state, those businesses have options too, like the option to leave. Investor Sharyl Attkisson and another billionaire, Paul Singer, moved their respective company headquarters to Florida, where it's been reported top execs at both J.P. Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs are also open to relocating certain company divisions. It's not only the banks that could bail. The New York Stock Exchange threatening to leave its namesake if the state legislature resurrects a 40-year-old transfer tax on stock sales. Exchange President Stacey Cunningham writing bluntly in the Wall Street Journal recently, if Albany lawmakers get their way, the center of the global financial industry may need to find a new home.
I wish a politician would have their own business for a year to think how to deal with the small businesses.
I am so thrilled to announce to you all that I am running for mayor of New York City.
Enter New York native Andrew Yang, 2020 presidential candidate.
That I am the candidate that's best situated to defeat Donald Trump soundly in the
Now pledging to use the knowledge he gained launching startup companies for the good of small business owners across New York City.
Can there or should there be something that a New York City mayor could do to help small and large businesses alike?
I think the city needs to be a better partner and champion. Where right now when I talk to small business owners, they say they only hear from New York City to check up on whether they're complying with various regulations. Instead, we should be reaching out to companies, big and small, to say, here are resources that are available. Is there any way we can help?
Andrew Yang is one of some 40 candidates running to replace term-limited Mayor Bill de Blasio.
The duties of the office of the mayor in the city of
De Blasio leaves office with a dubious legacy, including a loss of confidence by his police force and, more recently, by 150 business leaders, claiming the mayor's lack of decisive leadership opened the door to higher crime rates and a declining quality of life, ultimately jeopardizing the city's economic recovery and their own bottom line. In an open letter, they write, "There is widespread anxiety over public safety, cleanliness, and other quality of life issues that are contributing to deteriorating conditions in commercial districts and neighborhoods across the 5 boroughs." De Blasio's favorability among New Yorkers is low, too. Results of a recent Siena College poll showing Rudy Giuliani and Mike Pence with more street cred than the city's 109th mayor. Yang's ticket rivals for the June primary include City Comptroller Scott Stringer, Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, and Sean Donovan, who served in Obama's cabinet. Guardian Angels founder and conservative radio host Curtis Sliwa among few Republican candidates in the running for mayor. Whoever voters elect in November will inherit a city in distress. Tourism evaporated. Broadway is dark. Restaurants and hotels have closed, leaving thousands unemployed and hacking millions of tax dollars from city and state budgets. Murder rates rising nearly 70% between 2019 and 2020. Year-over-year gun arrests surging more than 60%. While crimes are rising, law enforcement veteran Howard Safer is hailed for reducing them in New York City.
We're going back, unfortunately, to the bad old days.
Safer was commissioner of the New York City Police Department under Mayor Rudy Giuliani.
What kind of city did you inherit in 1996 as police commissioner?
City in transition. There were over 1,000 murders that year. When I left, there were under 600. We were being heralded all over the world as being the safest large city in America. We drove drug traffickers out of New York, and we used aggressive tactics to get guns off the street. And suddenly Times Square, which was a den of iniquity when we got there, became a family-friendly entertainment center.
Notwithstanding the pandemic, do you think there's a connection between the way the city is being run and the exodus that we're seeing?
Absolutely. The exodus is because taxes are high, services are low, and if you're somebody who has a company that you wish to survive, or a large company where you wish to attract talented employees, the answer today is not New York. It's Florida or Texas.
It's a realization many New Yorkers and hundreds of others embraced well ahead of the pandemic, when between July 2018 and July 2019, an eye-opening 2,600 people left the New York City region each week, according to one analysis of U.S. Census data.
We can't take anything for granted anymore. We can't just say, we're New York City, everyone needs to be here and is willing to pay a premium. We're going to have to make our case as a community in a way that I think is new and different.
Still, fresh ideas can benefit from sage advice. Safer offering this to whomever wins in November.
I would tell them first, let the police be the police. Make it the way it was, the safest large city in America. Don't overtax them. Don't make everything burdensome.
As for John Scanlon,
Like if I knew what I knew now, man, I'd be a fireman. You know, you work your 20 years, you get your pension, and I come to work every day to do the best I can. And when you get keep on getting chopped down, it's very frustrating.
Is there any hope or plan for things to get better?
Probably not in the short term. Economically, Albany has a lot of work to do just to keep the red states that are nipping at New York's heels in the distance. And there's another unintended economic consequence happening here. So the U.S. Census is going to put out new population numbers this fall. And there is a very real possibility that New York is going to lose 2 House seats because of population decline.
Wow.
So for a city whose motto is ever upward, it looks like they're in a pretty significant downward spiral.
Very interesting story. Thank you. Appreciate it. Ahead on Full Measure, we head to Sturgis, South Dakota to find out if their popular motorcycle rally was really a COVID super spreader. If you've heard of Sturgis, South Dakota, it's probably because of its annual motorcycle rally. In 2020, Sturgis made headlines for hosting the famous affair while much of America was shut down. Today, we head to Sturgis off-season to find out if the motorcycle rally was really the deadly event some made it out to be.
Well, I was born in the eastern part of the state, but we moved out here when I was just a little feller.
Ernie Miller is a Sturgis town legend, much like the historic rally that started as an inauspicious affair back in 1936.
Did you ever go and watch that?
Oh, yeah.
You were a kid?
Yeah, I think Dad brought us in from the farm one year, and we watched a motorcycle, and it was dirt, you know, and boy, when they go down the curve, the dirt would just fly. Yeah, it used to be the fastest half-mile dirt track in the United States. It used to be. Can you imagine that?
And then this is the half mile in Sturgis.
History hangs on the walls in downtown Sturgis at the Loud American Roadhouse owned by Dean Kenny.
This is Pappy Hoyle. He's widely credited with starting the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. He had an Indian dealership here back in the 1930s.
For a business like this, bar and restaurant, can you quantify or give any examples of how much business you do during the rally when it's as big as like we've talked about versus what you do the rest of the year?
Yeah, I can. We do about a third of our business that we do in this bar restaurant in about 16 days.
Can you mark a year or a time when the rally went from being something that was not so big to just the game changer that it is today?
Absolutely. It was 1990. For the 50th anniversary, there was some expectation it would be larger, but we were totally unprepared for it to be what it was, which was around 500,000. So it went up 6-8 times its normal size on 1 year and then stayed that big. So it became huge and never went back.
But of all the Sturgis rallies, there's never been one quite like last year's. 460,000 bikers descended upon the Black Hills of South Dakota at the height of the coronavirus pandemic, making it one of the year's most criticized events.
Was there consideration given? Were people talking about should we try to cancel it?
Oh,
Is
absolutely.
there a way to cancel it?
Yeah. We, for about 2.5 months, we held a wide variety of town hall discussions. We also held telephone conferences with state health officials, with our local health officials here.
Daniel Ainsley is the Sturgis city manager. He says they went forward with the rally for practical reasons.
Our surveys during the rally showed that over 70% of the people were going to come here, whether or not we officially hosted the rally. So for a city of 7,000 people to host hundreds of thousands of people, there have to be preparations.
Some quickly labeled the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally a super spreading event. One study claimed the event was responsible for more than 266,000 COVID-19 cases, 19%, or nearly 1 in 5 of everyone reported in America at the time.
It became pretty obvious that it was a narrative throughout the entire nation, and especially the news media, that wanted to pin it on these people that were being utterly irresponsible. And, you know, they were denying the virus and everything else. I don't think anyone is denying that there was a virus here,
Ainsley says rampant speculation was fueled by inaccurate reporting.
Someone called you and said they were counted as a coronavirus case from Sturgis, but they didn't even attend?
Yeah, we had one individual that stated that they were just driving to Washington State, and they were driving along I-90, which of course runs through our community. And so then they were counted as one of the Sturgis recipients, even though they didn't even stop in Sturgis. They just stopped a couple hundred miles to the east and a couple hundred miles to the west. But according to their state health official, apparently they were a Sturgis victim of the coronavirus.
Did you say people were showing video, though, on the news sometimes?
Oh, yeah,
of
absolutely.
Past years?
Absolutely. There was, which to us was really disappointing because we have several live feed cameras, and we gave every media outlet permission so that they could use that, so that they could show current images. Because the vast majority of the time on our streets, there would be, 40 or 50 people on a block. But instead, they were showing images from previous rallies, and a lot of times it was from the 75th rally, which was massive. And it would show our streets lined with thousands and thousands of people. I mean, it was images that were over 5 years old, and people acted differently in 2015 than what they did in 2020. Once a bar or restaurant started to even feel full, people weren't going in. I mean, people spent most of the time outdoors, and they were out riding the hundreds and thousands of miles of amazing highways that we have winding through canyons and mountains.
Ainsley said the town was told models predicted Sturgis hospitals would be overwhelmed and up to 5% of people in town would die, but that never came to pass. Now, months after the August rally, it's widely acknowledged that there's no way to know for sure if anybody was infected at Sturgis, let alone who and how many.
I think at the peak during the rally and even after the rally, about 5% of the beds were used for COVID.
Based on statistics alone, scientific estimates indicate there should have been several hundred COVID deaths among the 460,000 Sturgis bikers, even if they hadn't gone to the rally. In the end, the media linked anywhere from 1 to about 5 fatalities to Sturgis, and none says Ainsley was scientifically traced.
The hard data showed that there were about 260 cases that came from here. Now, the reality was there were probably some additional cases beyond what those 260 that were immediately traced here, but to try to state that there were 250,000, I mean, that's just ridiculous, and it was fanciful, and it was just pushing their narrative.
In the end, the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally officially survived coronavirus in 2020, and so did Ernie Miller.
And I'm still alive.
Who recently celebrated his 97th birthday. While those stats may not have drawn the same level of publicity, the town's far too busy getting ready for this year's rally to spend much time worrying about that.
Well, just lots of people. Yeah, people come from all over the surrounding area just to come in to watch, just see what's going on. It's a vacation for them.
By the way, the alarming study that claims Sturgis caused more than 250,000 COVID cases, a Johns Hopkins School of Public Health review called some of that analysis weak and said the results should be interpreted cautiously. Coming up on Full Measure, a first-hand account of how drug and human trafficking has continued along the southern border even during the pandemic. Coronavirus dramatically changed the way commerce is conducted across our southern border. Non-essential travel has been halted for a year, but commercial traffic never stopped. Neither did the illicit drug and human trafficking. I recently got a briefing from Michael Humphreys, director of the Nogales, Arizona Port of Entry. So I guess you could kind of describe the area we're about to enter here.
Yeah, so we're entering into the secondary area here. Vehicles up here are getting the first look at. We try to get several looks at all vehicles coming through. So vehicle gets released. If it's not referred, it'll come through here. We've got our canine, we've got our contraband enforcement team who specialize in detecting narcotics.
So what are the big changes that have happened here since coronavirus?
A lot of people are nervous over it. There's been some travel restrictions put into play. We're going on about a year now. Essential travelers are allowed in, but those on a traveler visa or a tourist visa coming in for pleasure are not allowed to come in at this time.
And how has that impacted the traffic that you process on a daily basis that the for pleasure travelers can't come in?
So traffic is down approximately 55% from a year ago.
What is the impact of coronavirus, as far as you can tell, on the illegal movement of drugs that you pick up? Have you seen a difference in the kind of drugs being moved and how it's being moved here?
A few years back, we shifted to more hard narcotics than marijuana. And then in the last year, we've seen an uptick in people carrying narcotics on or within, inside their bodies.
Why do you think that is?
The smugglers that the organizations hire, that pool has shrunk because a lot of their smugglers had visitor visas who are not allowed to cross now. So they have to go more for the lawful admitted permanent residents and the U.S. citizens.
So they're recruiting more U.S. citizens?
Yes, and legal permanent residents as well.
Coronavirus aside, what are some of the trends overall in recent years in what's being moved across the border in terms of either human smuggling or what kinds of drugs?
Yeah, so we've seen, 5 years ago, we really never heard of fentanyl for other than for medical usage. And 5 years ago, we probably seized less than a half a pound of fentanyl. This past year, we seized about 3.5 million fentanyl tablets. It's one of the most dangerous opioids out there.
That's at this one port?
That's just at this one port. Another dangerous opioid is heroin, and we seized over 1,000 pounds of heroin as well. So preventing that from reaching the interior cities and states of America is a high priority.
The federal government estimates that about $30 billion worth of legal goods cross between the U.S. and Mexico at the Nogales port of entry every year. And we'll be back with a look at what's ahead next week on Full Measure. Here's what's coming up next week on Full Measure. IBM is the focus of a massive group of claims after a strategy to hire what it calls new-collar workers and replace older employees came to light.
He said, well, Bill, this is not a call I really wanted to make.
What did you think when he said that?
I go, okay, this is not going well.
We investigate the case against IBM next week on Full Measure. Until then, thanks for watching. We'll be searching for more stories that hold powers accountable.